The laughter that had filled the studio just moments ago vanished, leaving only a tense hum. Joy Behar slammed his hand against the desk, the sharp crack echoing louder than anyone expected. His eyes, usually playful and teasing, were narrowed, focused, burning with a frustration no one had seen before. Across from him, Judy Bench leaned forward, her gaze steady, unflinching. The air between them seemed to vibrate with unspoken words, with questions that no one dared ask out loud. A microphone trembled as if it too felt the tension. The studio lights flickered once, twice, and the audience shifted in their seats, uneasy. Sensing that something was about to break, whispers floated from the crew behind the cameras, half-heard and anxious. The producer's hand hovered over the control board, unsure if they should cut to a commercial or let the moment play out. But this wasn't scripted, not really. This was raw. This was real. Judy's voice cut through the thick silence, calm, deliberate. A single line that seemed harmless on paper but struck like lightning in the room. Joy's smile faltered, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and for a heartbeat the world paused. The audience froze, caught between curiosity and shock. Every pair of eyes was locked on the tension that had exploded from what had been only minutes ago, a friendly conversation. The laughter stopped. The red light blinked twice, then silence, and in that silence, a question burned through every mind. What would happen next? Before the storm, the studio had felt almost ordinary. The laughter, the applause, the flicker of lights, everything seemed routine, rehearsed, safe. Joy Behar moved with the ease of someone who had hosted thousands of shows. His voice smooth, his gestures practiced. He wasn't just a host, he was control in a velvet suit, commanding the room without raising his voice. Judy Bench, seated across, seemed equally composed, her posture calm, her eyes sharp and attentive. But beneath that calm lay a mind, calculating, weighing every word, every pause, every glance. The audience had settled into comfort, believing they were witnessing casual banter, not the beginning of a collision. The topic had started innocently enough, a political statement, a controversial opinion, but there was a tension hiding in the edges of their words, a friction that had gone unnoticed until now. The cameramen shifted slightly in their chairs, catching micro-expressions that hinted at cracks forming in the polished surface. Behind the scenes, producers exchanged subtle glances, sensing a storm building that could not be controlled by cues or scripted interventions. In this calm before the storm, even small details seemed amplified. The faint tapping of Joy's pen, the rustle of Judy's notes, the barely perceptible murmurs of the audience. Every element of the set, the blinking lights, the microphones, the polished desk felt like it had been waiting for this moment to witness chaos. And as they spoke, the tension grew almost imperceptibly, like the slow tightening of a coiled spring. The viewers watching at home could feel it too. Even before anything had visibly broken, something was coming, something that would shatter the veneer of civility and transform the familiar stage into a battleground. And just as the audience leaned in, unsuspecting, a single line hung in the air, deliberate, impossible to ignore. It was the first spark, the moment that would turn calm into confrontation, and polite conversation into conflict. It happened in a single heartbeat. Judy Bench's words cut through the delicate hum of the studio like a knife, precise, deliberate, impossible to ignore. She leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but weighted, delivering a line that seemed almost casual, yet beneath it, there was a sting that no one, not even Joy, could ignore. The audience, still caught in the rhythm of polite engagement, froze. The air thickened, every movement slowing, as if the studio itself had paused to witness the shift. Joy's usual playful grin faltered, the corners of his mouth twitching as he struggled to maintain composure. His eyes, normally quick and teasing, hardened, searching for a foothold, for a way to regain control. But the words had landed with a precision that left him momentarily unarmed. The microphones picked up every subtle change, the catch in Joy's breath, the quiet rustle of Judy's notes, the faint exhale of tension from the audience. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, lingering on the split-second expressions that revealed more than any dialogue could convey. Silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the faint flicker of lights and the distant hum of the control room. Every pause carried weight, every glance became a statement. The calm had shattered, replaced by something sharper, more electric, something that made the audience instinctively lean in closer. Unable to look away then, the microbeats began, teeny pauses, subtle shifts, each word now a potential trigger. Joy opened his mouth, closed it, tried again, the tension growing like a storm cloud ready to burst. Judy's eyes remained steady, almost unreadable. But there was an undercurrent of challenge there, a quiet insistence that this was her stage too, even in the face of his authority. The energy in the room changed completely. It was no longer a show. It was a spark, small, seemingly harmless, yet enough to ignite a confrontation that would leave everyone stunned. And just like that, everything changed. The tension snapped. Joy Behar leaned forward, voice rising just enough to cut through the charged silence. Every word was precise, sharp, a mixture of frustration and disbelief. Judi Dench did not flinch. Her calm exterior masked a surge of determination, her eyes locking with his, unwavering. The audience shifted uneasily, sensing the storm erupting before them. Short, clipped sentences collided with longer, deliberate ones, creating a rhythm of chaos that pulsed through the studio. Every gesture, every pause, every glance added fuel to the fire. The air felt heavier with each passing second. The flicker of the studio lights exaggerating the sharp lines of tension etched across their faces. Joy's words grew faster, more desperate, trying to regain control. He gestured toward the topic, toward the statements that had sparked this confrontation. But Judi's calmness only intensified the clash. She responded deliberately, measured, but her tone carried an edge that cut deeper than any raised voice could. Microbeats punctuated the fight, a hand on the desk, a subtle lean forward, a half-smile that didn't reach the eyes. The cameras captured it all, the tightening of jaws, the twitch of an eyebrow, the barely suppressed reactions from the crew behind the scenes. It was raw. It was human. No one was a villain yet. Both sides were flawed. Both sides were human. Both sides were trapped in a moment that neither could walk away from. Isolate the audience, caught between fascination and fear, could feel the energy spike. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd, but the focus never wavered from the two at the center. Every sentence raised stakes. Every pause stretched tension. The laughter that had once defined the show was gone, replaced by the sound of confrontation itself, a low hum of conflict. Sharp exhalations, the scrape of chairs, the faint click of microphones picking up the storm. In that moment, the studio wasn't a set. It was a battlefield, and no one knew who would walk away. Joy Behar stood abruptly, the chair scraping harshly against the polished studio floor. The sound seemed to echo longer than it should, reverberating through the stunned silence that had settled over the audience. Judi Dench remained seated, calm yet undeniably victorious in her poise, her gaze following him as he stormed toward the exit. The crew behind the cameras exchanged hurried glances, their fingers hovering over buttons, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment play out. Whispers filled the corners of the studio, the kind of murmurs that only happen when something unscripted breaks through the rehearsed performance of a show. Outside the frame, producers and assistants moved quickly, trying to salvage control, but it was too late. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every micro-expression, every pause, every glance that revealed the tension no words could fully explain. Social media, for those watching live or in snippets, began to ignite. Clips of the confrontation appeared within minutes, and comments flooded in speculation, outrage, amusement, disbelief. Fans debated who had the upper hand, analysts dissected body language, and the news cycles found themselves swallowing a story before it had even finished unfolding on the broadcast. Back in the studio, silence hung heavier than ever. The lights continued to hum, the microphones picked up the faintest echoes of shuffling papers. The audience remained frozen, caught between curiosity and disbelief. Behind the scenes, the storm of logistics and strategy collided with the raw emotional fallout of what had just transpired. Everyone felt it, the sudden shift from entertainment to conflict, the knowledge that this was no ordinary broadcast. And yet, as the red air light blinked and the cameras continued rolling, one unspoken truth lingered. This was a moment that could not be undone, a fracture in the show's polished facade that would echo far beyond the studio walls. The studio lights had dimmed, but the echoes of the confrontation lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Social media exploded, clips looping endlessly, gifs of Joy's storming exit, close-ups of Judi Dench's unshaken composure. Hashtags trended within minutes. Fans debated heatedly in comment sections, some defending Joy, others praising Judi's restraint. News outlets pounced, publishing headlines that made the incident feel larger than life, larger than a single episode, larger than the show itself. Every phone screen and notification seemed to carry the pulse of the storm, the intensity of the clash, the subtle power struggle that had unfolded before millions of eyes. Inside the studio, the crew moved quietly, their movements deliberate, almost cautious. Producers huddled in corners, reviewing what had been recorded. calculating the ripple effects, trying to predict the next wave. The set, once bustling with energy and rehearsed lines, now felt like a quiet battlefield. Each prop, each microphone, each blinking light seemed to bear witness to the tension that had passed through it. The echo of Joy's footsteps as he left the stage still lingered in the air, haunting and unignorable, a reminder that control could slip at any moment. Meanwhile, Judi Dench's calm continued to dominate the narrative. Interviews, behind-the-scenes snippets, and opinion pieces painted her as the steady force in a sea of chaos. Yet, even she couldn't fully escape the whispers, the questions, the speculation, the what-if moments that began circulating everywhere. Audiences watched, and replayed the confrontation, dissecting every word, every expression, every pause, as if the truth was hidden in the smallest details. In that aftermath, the world realized this was more than a studio clash. It was a reflection of power, ego, and human fragility captured live, shared endlessly, and impossible to forget. And as the feeds refreshed and notifications piled up, one question hung in the air: what would happen next? The dust had settled, at least on the surface. But the echoes of what had happened still reverberated through every corner of the studio and beyond. Joy Behar's absence was palpable, the empty chair behind the desk, a silent reminder of the clash that had shaken the show to its core. Judi Dench remained seated, composed, yet even her steady posture carried a subtle tension, the kind only those who had faced conflict and survived could carry. The audience, both in the studio and watching from home, had been transformed from passive observers into participants in a moment of raw, unfiltered human emotion. Every reaction, every replay, every discussion that followed became part of the story's living aftermath. News cycles continued to churn, analyzers dissected gestures and tone, fans and critics debated endlessly. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was a quiet clarity. This was more than a clash of personalities. It was a reflection of power, truth, and the fragility of control under pressure. Moments that once seemed trivial, an eyebrow raise, a measured pause, a subtle shift in tone, now carried monumental significance. Viewers could sense the invisible tension that lingered, the weight of unspoken words, the questions that remained unanswered. And yet, even as opinions swirled and theories formed, the story refused to fully resolve. There was closure in the confrontation's end, but mystery remained in its implications. Who had truly held the upper hand? What consequences would ripple beyond the studio walls? The answers were not immediate, and perhaps they never would be. What lingered most vividly was the human truth at the heart of it all. In moments of tension, in moments of silence, character revealed itself in ways words never could. In a world built on applause, silence can speak louder than words. But the real story, it's still unfolding. The stage is quiet now. The lights are dim, and the echoes of what happened still hang in the air. Joy Behar's chair sits empty, Judi Dench's calm demeanor dominates the frame, and the audience, both in the studio and at home, can't stop replaying every moment. In a world built on applause, on laughter, on the constant validation of the crowd, this silence speaks louder than anything anyone said that night. It's the pause that makes you think, the weight that forces reflection, the tension that lingers even when the cameras stop rolling. Every glance, every pause, every word that hung in the air reminds us of something fundamental. Power is fleeting, control is fragile, and truth often reveals itself not in what's shouted, but in what remains unsaid. Fans and viewers will debate, analysts will dissect, headlines will be written and rewritten. Yet the moment itself, raw and unfiltered, remains beyond interpretation. It belongs to those who witnessed it, those who felt it, and those who dare to ask the question that lingers longer than any answer. What would you have done if you were in that room? Would you have held your ground, or walked away? In the end, silence tells more than words ever could. The screen fades, heartbeat echoes. The story isn't over, it's only just begun.